You are watching the exact moment, a man who has spent the last decade carefully constructing the most expensive image in modern hip-hop runs out of places to hide it. Because Traplore Ross just dropped a documentary connecting Drake and OVO not to one alleged street organization, but to a second one, the Galloway Boys, on top of the Hells Angels ties that were already half confirmed by the man's own Instagram story. And the only people who still believe this is a coincidence are the same. People who believed Iceman was going to drop in 2025. And I need you to understand something before we go a single second further. Because everybody in the comments is about to tell me I'm reaching. Everybody is about to say it's just a YouTube documentary. Everybody is about to say Canada doesn't have Rico. Sit with this for a second. The man we are talking about is not a mid-tier rapper. This is the highest streamed artist of his generation. This is a billion-dollar brand. And the timeline of his public behavior over the last 18 months, the deleted posts, the embassy laptop with the logo on it, the Baca campaign, the Iceman delay that nobody at his label will explain, the gambling Rico civil suit that was filed on December 31st, 2025 alongside Aiden Ross over the stake situation. That timeline is not the timeline of a man who is comfortable. That is the timeline of a man who knows something is closing in. And while all of this is happening, on the other side of the map, you got a Compton kid who just set the record for the highest grossing rap concert in Canadian history, in Drake's own city, in Drake's own stadium. And the only thing the opposition can come up with is an LA artist on a podcast suggesting GNX was a publicity stunt. A publicity stunt for the album that already went platinum before most people finished their first listen. We are not having two equal conversations here. We are watching two completely different career arcs in real time, and I'm about to walk you through every single piece of evidence that proves one of these men is rising into the history books, while the other one is being slowly walked toward a courtroom. And the moment we get to the Lefty Gunplay Calabasa's studio call section, you're going to understand why the people closest to this situation already know how it ends. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Now let me set the table the right way, because I see the comment section already typing. And half of you don't even know the full layout of what's actually happening here. Traplore Ross is the documentary filmmaker who has been methodically building public record case files on Drake and the OVO ecosystem for over a year now. His earlier work already mapped out the Hells Angels overlap, the Baca Not Nice situation, the Bucker connections, the Tyshawn Riley material. Every name with documented criminal connections that has somehow ended up in the immediate orbit of the man who keeps telling us he's a Jewish kid from Forest Hill who used to be on Degrassi. This new piece is different. This piece introduces the Galloway Boys, a Toronto-based street organization that law enforcement up there has been tracking for years. And Ross is laying out the argument that OVO's relationships with members of that organization aren't tangential, aren't accidental, aren't just rappers being friendly with people from the neighborhood. They're structural. They're operational. They overlap in ways that, if we were talking about any other label in any other city, would already have a federal task force assigned to them. And the stakes here, fam, are not the stakes you think they are. The personal stakes are obvious. Drake's freedom, Drake's brand, Drake's ability to walk through customs in 3 different countries. All of that is on the table the second a prosecutor decides the public record is sufficient. But the cultural stakes are bigger than that. We're talking about the man who has spent 10 years convincing an entire generation that you can buy your way into authenticity, that you can cosplay the streets if your accountant is good enough, that the music industry will protect you as long as your numbers stay up. And if that man gets walked into a courtroom, even a civil one, even just the gambling Rico that's already been filed, every artist who built their identity on the same model has to rethink their entire business. And the systemic stakes are even bigger, because the dirty secret of the modern major label era is that the line between a record company and an enterprise has been blurry for a long time. Young Thug went down on a state-level Rico. Lil Durk is sitting in a federal case. YSL was prosecuted as a criminal organization. The blueprint is already on the table. The only thing that has been protecting OVO from that blueprint up to this point has been the assumption that the embassy is a clean operation. Ross's documentary is the first piece of public-facing journalism that puts that assumption under real pressure. So the question I need you to sit with for the next 20 minutes is not whether you like Drake or you don't like Drake. The question is whether the pattern of evidence stacking up around him is consistent with a music label, or whether it is consistent with something else entirely. And I'll tell you right now, by the time we get to the contract-level breakdown, the answer is not going to be the one his fanbase has been telling themselves. Let's start where everybody can see it, because the surface evidence on this one is so loud that I don't even understand how the conversation hasn't gone further than it has. Piece 1. The Instagram story. Drake himself, on his own verified account, on his own time, posted a story showing a laptop with a Hell's Angels logo on it. That's not a leak. That's not a paparazzi shot. That's not somebody at the studio leaking footage. That is the man, with full editorial control of his own page, deciding that visual was something he wanted millions of people to see. You don't post that by accident. You don't post that to disavow it. You post it because, at minimum, you want the world to associate you with the symbolism of that organization. And in any Rico case, prosecutors don't need a confession. They need a pattern. That post is part of the pattern. Piece 2. The festival incident in Canada involving Rick Ross getting punched at a show, where the individual involved was reportedly affiliated with the Hells Angels. That connection didn't come from a YouTube documentary. That came from local reporting at the time. Piece 3. The Baka Not Nice situation, which has been documented in Canadian press going back years. Drake has continued to platform, employ, and publicly defend an individual whose criminal record reads like a worst-case scenario federal exhibit. And we're not talking about a guy who caught a charge once and turned his life around. We're talking about a sustained pattern of association that prosecutors love because it speaks to what they call knowledge and intent. Piece 4, and this is the one nobody wants to talk about. The civil RICO lawsuit filed on December 31, 2025 naming Drake and Aiden Ross and connecting them to the stake gambling platform, with allegations that stake proceeds were being used to artificially inflate streaming numbers. Allegedly. Reportedly. I want to be very careful about the language here because this is an active civil matter, but the existence of that filing is verified, public on the docket, and the allegations inside it touched the exact infrastructure that a federal investigation into a music enterprise would care about. So we are not even debating whether there is smoke. The smoke is documented. The smoke is on the man's own Instagram page. The smoke is in a federal civil filing. The smoke is in the reporting from credible Canadian outlets on the Galloway boys. The only thing left to debate is whether the smoke produces a fire. And even the most loyal stand in the comment section can't tell me with a straight face that this volume of overlap is normal for a record label that supposedly just makes Toronto R&B. Because it isn't. And do I have more for you? I know the stands are already typing. I know that you're just a hater comments are coming. I know somebody is in their notes app right now writing a 5-paragraph response about how everything I just laid out is circumstantial. And listen, the next layer is the one that's actually going to hurt. Because if you thought the publicly visible evidence was bad, wait until you hear what the people who were inside the room are starting to say out loud. Because somebody who was reportedly invited to OVO Studios in Calabasas right after TV Off dropped just sat down on a podcast and told the entire story. And the way that story ends is the reason a lot of people in LA are looking at Drake very differently right now. Let me walk you through the cultural layer. Because this is where the picture stops being about documentaries and starts being about people who actually have to share rooms with these characters. Layer 1, Lefty Gunplay, who, as a reminder, is the LA rapper who appeared on TV Off, won a Grammy with Kendrick for Best Rap Song, and became the first Latino artist to win in that category, sat down for an interview, and explained that immediately after TV Off blew up, a producer reportedly reached out from OVO Studios in Calabasas with a pull-up invitation. Lefty, by his own account, called Problem his collaborator and one of the smartest minds in West Coast hip-hop business. And Problem, according to Lefty, said exactly what anyone with 2 functioning eyes would have said. Don't fall for that trick. So Lefty ghosted them. End of conversation. Or so he thought. Layer 2, after the Grammys, the same approach happens again. A different OVO-adjacent producer reaches out, this time with a specific ask. Reportedly 4 words from Lefty on a Drake record. 4 words. That's it. And anyone who has spent 5 minutes in this industry understands exactly what that request is. Because nobody who is making music for the music asks for 4 words. 4 words is a chess move. 4 words is a screenshot. 4 words is a press release. 4 words is a way to say to Kendrick and the entire West Coast, your guy is over here too. And Lefty, to his credit, eventually walked it back when the request started feeling weirder. He said it on camera. He said, we're men of value. We'll get the money ourselves. That is the cultural temperature of this moment. The biggest rapper in the world allegedly trying twice, to peel off a feature from the Grammy-winning artist who appeared on the song that buried him. And the answer both times is silence. Layer 3, and this is the one that should embarrass the stan base, is the absolute lack of artist solidarity around Drake right now. When Kendrick did the pop-out concert in LA, the entire West Coast showed up. Game showed up. Dr. Dre showed up. Schoolboy Q showed up. YG showed up. Ty Dolla $ign showed up. The visual was a unified front. When Drake has needed that same energy from his peers in the last 18 months, who has actually stood next to him, in a meaningful way, not a tweet, not an Instagram comment, standing on stage, in the building, eating the public risk with him. The list is short, fam. The list is so short it tells you everything about how the rest of the industry is reading the situation. Layer 4, the Iceman delay. The album was teased. The album was promoted. The kickstreams were doing real numbers. The world was set up to receive an album. And then it didn't drop. Officially, in 2025, it has not arrived. And the explanations being floated are not artist explanations. They are damage control explanations. There's been reporting suggesting the delay is connected to the Some Sexy Songs For You project not landing the way the label expected. There's been speculation that the delay is about giving the Kendrick conversation more time to fade. But the Kendrick conversation isn't fading, because Kendrick is on a record-setting world tour. And every new headline he generates pushes any potential Drake release further into a headwind. And here is the counter-argument that the stan base wants to make, and I'll address it directly, because I want this video to be honest. They will say, the delay is strategic. They will say, the delay is artistic. They will say, you can't read a delay as weakness. And in a normal year, with a normal artist, in a normal media environment, they would be right. But this is not a normal year. This is the year after the most public defeat in modern rap history. The year where the man's own city threw a stadium-sized celebration of the artist who beat him. The year where his own former associates are reportedly being told to keep their distance. The year a federal civil Rico landed on his lap on New Year's Eve. In that environment, a delay isn't strategy. A delay is the sound of a label trying to figure out how to release an album into a market that has already decided. And by the way, does anybody at all want to tell me with a straight face that an artist confident in his moment delays his own album for over a year? Be serious. All right, I need you to pay attention now, because we are switching gears. And the next part is the part that separates the people who watch hip-hop from the people who actually understand it. Because everything I just laid out, the documentaries, the lawsuits, the failed feature attempts, the delayed album, all of that lives at the entertainment layer. The street-level conversation. The Twitter timeline conversation. The who's winning the beef conversation. That is not the real conversation. The real conversation is what is happening at the business level, the contract level, the ownership level, and the systemic media level. And if you have never sat in a room where people who actually move money in this industry talk about Drake, you would be shocked at how differently the room reads this situation from the way the comment section reads it. So let me take you behind that curtain for a minute. Angle 1. The manufactured streaming infrastructure. The civil RICO that was filed on December 31st, 2025 is not a random nuisance lawsuit. The specific allegation inside that filing is that the relationship between Drake, Stake, and the streaming ecosystem was not a passive endorsement relationship. It was reportedly an active, allegedly engineered system in which gambling platform revenue was being cycled into streaming activity that artificially inflated chart performance. I want to be very careful here. Those are allegations. Drake has denied wrongdoing. The case is civil. But you have to understand what it means as a structural claim. If even a fraction of the allegations inside that filing are upheld, what it documents is the existence of a coordinated promotional machine that the public was never told about. And the prosecutors and regulators who watch the music industry have been waiting for years for a major artist's promotional machinery to get exposed in discovery. Because the second one of these promotional machines gets opened up in a courtroom, every label in this country has to renegotiate how they account for streaming data, how they certify chart numbers, how they value catalogs and acquisition deals. Drake is not just a defendant in that filing. He is a test case for whether the manufactured streaming era can survive contact with the legal system. And that's why this story is bigger than him. The systemic stakes here are the entire chart economy of the last 10 years. Angle 2. The label politics. Republic. Universal. The relationships behind the relationships. You don't have to be a music business graduate to understand that an artist of Drake's stature is not just a recording artist. He is a balance sheet asset. His catalog, his publishing, his masters, his brand licensing, his touring infrastructure. All of it is collateralized inside a corporate structure that has shareholders, has reporting obligations, has quarterly earnings calls. And when an asset that big starts attracting federal civil RICO level legal exposure on top of allegations, connecting him to multiple street organizations on 2 different continents, the people running that corporate structure don't have the luxury of loyalty. They have fiduciary duty. So the question that is being asked allegedly in rooms the average fan will never see is not, how do we promote the next Drake album? The question being asked is, what is our exposure if the worst-case scenario plays out, and what is our exit plan? That is why every Drake rollout for the last 12 months has felt slightly off. That is why the visual identity has been chaotic. That is why the feature attempts are getting strange. That is why the Iceman delay is real. You are not watching an artist in creative bloom. You are watching a corporate asset being managed through a period of acute legal and reputational risk. And the symptoms of that management are visible on the surface for anybody paying attention. Angle 3, and this is the one that the surface-level conversation completely misses, is the geopolitical layer. Drake's situation isn't a Toronto problem, and it isn't an LA problem. It's a cross-border problem. The man has homes in the United States. He records in California. He performs in the States. He platforms American streamers like Aiden Ross. He has corporate filings that touch American jurisdictions. So the casual haha Canada doesn't have Rico deflection that his fanbase keeps reaching for is one of the most embarrassing legal arguments I have ever seen mass deployed online. The Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act is a United States federal statute. It does not require a defendant to be physically located in the United States at all times. It requires a pattern of racketeering activity with a sufficient nexus to United States jurisdiction. And every single time Drake records in California, every single time a stake-related transaction touches a US-based platform, every single time an OVO-adjacent individual moves money across the border, that nexus is being built in the background. The civil RICO that was already filed is the first acknowledgement of that nexus. Whether it expands, whether it escalates, whether it becomes criminal, those are open questions. And I want to be honest that we don't know the answers. But anybody telling you that Drake is shielded by geography hasn't read a single federal court docket in the last 20 years. That is not how the statute works. That is not how cross-border enforcement works. That is not how prosecutorial cooperation between Canadian and American authorities works in the modern era. And here is where the analysis sharpens. The reason this matters, the reason this is the moment I have been pointing at for months, is because the documentary evidence stack, the civil filing, the cultural isolation from his own peers, the failed feature attempts, the delayed album, the geographic exposure, all of these are not separate stories. They are the same story from different angles. They are the symptoms of a single underlying condition. And that condition is that the public version of Drake's career and the private version of Drake's career have diverged so far apart that they can no longer be reconciled without something breaking. The only question is what breaks first when it breaks, and who is standing closest to it when the break happens. And here is the major truth bomb, the thing I want every single person watching this video to sit with, because once you hear this and you actually let it land, you will never look at the last 12 months of hip-hop the same way again. The story we have been told is that this is a rap beef. Two rappers. One song against another. Pop-out concert versus Iceman album. Numbers versus numbers. Streams versus streams. That story is wrong. That story has always been wrong. The actual story is that one of these men, Kendrick Lamar, has spent 20 years building a career on a foundation that does not require any of the things that are currently catching up to the other man. And the other man, Drake, has spent 20 years building a career on a foundation that is now allegedly the exact vulnerability that a federal civil filing, a documentary investigation, and a cross-border legal exposure are all simultaneously pulling on. This isn't a beef anymore. This hasn't been a beef in a long time. This is a structural reckoning. And the reason Kendrick is winning is not because his bars were better, although they were, and not because his concert grossed more, although it did, $7.7 million at the Rogers Centre, the highest-grossing rap concert in Canadian history, set in Drake's own city, but because his career was built on a foundation that doesn't crack under legal pressure. He owns his label. He owns his publishing. He owns his masters. He owns his decisions. He doesn't need a streaming inflation lawsuit to be number one. He doesn't need an alleged association with a street organization to feel authentic. He doesn't need a Lefty Gunplay forward feature to manufacture a moment. He gets the moment because the work earns the moment. And while we have been arguing in comment sections about who had the better diss record, the actual financial, legal, and cultural infrastructure of one of these men has been quietly hollowing out while the other one has been quietly compounding. And we are now at the point where the gap is no longer recoverable. That is the truth. That is the reveal. That is what I wanted to sit you down for. Not who won the beef, who survives the era. And the answer to that question, fam, has already been decided. The rest of us are just watching the credits roll. So let me bring this all the way home, because this is the part where I get to remind you why discipline always wins. Kendrick Lamar did not pull a publicity stunt with GNX. The idea is frankly insulting. The man broke a record at the Rogers Center, the highest-grossing rap concert in Canadian history. He won a Grammy for Best Rap Song with TV Off and made Lefty Gunplay the first Latino artist to win in that category. He sold out back-to-back nights at a stadium, not an arena, in Drake's own city, with 60 to 80,000 people rapping every word. And the only publicity stunt critique anyone has been able to mount against him is that he chose to platform an LA artist whose actual contribution to the album landed him on a Grammy stage and changed his entire life. That's not a stunt. That's the definition of an artist using his platform to elevate his community, which is exactly what Kendrick has been doing his entire career. Compton, the pop-out Dre, the West Coast, the whole infrastructure of how an honest rapper carries a region forward instead of extracting from it. One man's career is built on extraction. The other man's career is built on cultivation. One man surrounds himself with allegedly compromised relationships and then tries to cosplay distance when the consequences arrive. The other man surrounds himself with a region of artists, producers, engineers, choreographers, and stagehands, and then puts them all in front of 60,000 people to win together. That contrast is not subtle. That contrast is the entire video. And the reason I am telling you, with confidence, that the right person is going to keep winning here is not because I am biased, even though I am, and the bias is the brand, but because the evidence is already decided. Look at where each man stood 12 months ago. Look at where each man stands today. Look at which trajectory is compounding and which trajectory is degrading. The numbers tell you. The peers tell you. The empty seats versus the broken records tell you. The federal civil filings versus the Grammy speeches tell you. The delayed album versus the world tour tell you. The Lefty Gunplay phone calls that went unanswered tell you. The pop-out tells you. The Rogers Center tells you. Everything tells you. So when you log off this video and you go back to whatever timeline you spend your day in, and somebody in the comments tries to tell you that this is still close, or that this is still up for debate, or that Iceman is going to flip the entire narrative back, I want you to remember the evidence stack we just walked through. Because there is no Iceman big enough to undo what we just laid out. The cake is baked. The era is done. The new king has been crowned. And his name isn't a guess. But this is only the start, fam. And that's the part one really need you to hear before you click off. Because two specific things are coming over the next 90 days that I am going to be tracking on this channel obsessively, and you are not going to want to miss either one of them. The first is the trajectory of the stake civil Rico. Discovery is where these cases either expand or collapse, and the discovery phase of that filing is going to determine whether what we are calling allegations today gets escalated into something materially worse, or whether the entire matter folds. And either outcome is a top 3 story of 2026 in hip-hop. The second is the Iceman release window. If Drake drops, we're going to break down the rollout, the numbers, the reception, and what it means for the next chapter. If Drake doesn't drop in the next 90 days, we're going to break down exactly what that silence is communicating to the industry. Because in this business, silence is louder than any single. So subscribe, hit the bell, hit the like button if any of this resonated. Drop your read in the comments. I'm reading every single one, especially the long ones. Especially the ones from the people who think I'm reaching. Tell me where you think the stake case ends up. Tell me whether you think Iceman ever sees the light of day. Tell me whether Kendrick has another move to make, or whether he just lets the results speak. And before you click off, the next video I want you to watch is the one I just posted on the Aiden Ross deposition timeline. Because I'm going to walk you through the exact week the streamer's name first appears in the stake-related filings, the exact sequence of public statements he made before, during, and after, and the one specific moment in his live stream archive that I believe is going to be the most expensive 30 seconds of his entire career. You are going to want to be in the comments for that one. I'll see you in the next one. And fam, Kendrick Lamar doesn't have to do anything but drop fire music to get people to listen to him. He never did. He never will. The work earned the moment. The moment earned the era. And the era belongs to the right person. Always has.